I love art. You know that. My grandfather was an artist. I'm an artist. My daughter's an artist. My great great grandmother was an artist. With us now is Peter, and we're going to be talking about the art of engraving. Welcome to the show. How are
Thank you.
you?
Thank you. Fine.
So, Lou, my COO, introduced us, and he was telling me about the fact that this is what you do. And we were trying to decide whether it was a trade or if it was an art or how to
I
express.
think it's a little of both. It
Is it a-
certainly is both. I
okay.
consider it a craft, certainly. You have to be an artist to a certain extent. But for my part of the field, I'm a jewelry engraver, and it's mostly lettering. You have to know, and lettering is an art. That's another, hand lettering is something of a bygone era these days. And yes, so you do need to be somewhat of an artist to be
Now,
an
what
engraver.
typefaces engrave well? Like I would think, is it block lettering? Is it like what types of things have you over the years found the
Well,
most legible?
the standard, I would say Roman, which is the classic.
Okay.
All letters are based on that Roman alphabet, whether it's script, Old English, but there's Old English block, but it's all based on the Helvetic Roman. So yes, I say Roman is the most important and the classiest, and then usually for males it would be we would go with block or Roman, and females are more flowery script. So
Okay.
that's generally and monograms.
And I learned something from you too that I didn't know, which was Paul Revere.
Right.
What's the story about him?
Well, he was a silversmith, obviously, and,
Okay.
and a patriot. But besides being a patriot, that's what his family did. He learned, as I did, as an apprentice. His father was a silversmith, and he learned from his father. So apprenticeships go back to the days where they were really called indentured servants, where you would hand, it was always a father-son kind of hand trade that was handed down. And I was fortunate enough to have a family friend, Richard Amoli, if I might mention his name, and he worked at Tiffany in the 1950s, and I played handball with him, and he asked me if I would be interested, and I was still going to high school, and after high school I would go to his shop, and I just fell in love with it. I don't know, it was just divine intervention. I don't know what it was, but it was. I'm somewhat of an introvert, and it was like custom made. You know, when you have a job like that, I feel like the Lou Gehrig. I'm the luckiest guy in the world because
Yeah.
I made a living really in my own little world. It's beautiful. It's meditative. It's really, if anyone is fortunate enough, and I consider myself again very fortunate to be able to make a living doing what you love. It's great, and I'm really thankful for that.
And I have a graphic art background, so I understand kerning and letting. The difference between
Right.
the distance between the letters and
Right.
how to space the lines.
Exactly.
You have to have such precision in
That's
doing
the
that by
art.
hand, right?
That's the art of lettering, and in many ways, lettering is more difficult. Like people don't consider it an art, but it is. Again, years ago, you see in the offices, people would hand letter on the doors, and it's gone. And today, engraving, I'm a little bit pessimistic about it because they're kind of melding the two. They're melding the mechanical end of it and the hand.
Okay.
But the way I was taught, you had to learn the first year without picking up one of these tools. You would just draw lettering.
Really? With like
And
pen and ink lettering, you mean? You
yeah, with
hand draw letters?
pencil.
Okay.
You had to learn the structures of letters because, again, going back to art,
Right.
most people, if you showed them a drawing of a horse, all of us would say, yeah, it's okay, but there are probably mistakes in that horse that you and I might not pick up.
Right.
But if
But a
everybody
letter.
learns the alphabet and grammar, so A, B, C, if the A is crooked or the B is not right, you know it. So it's precise.
And
So
it's one and done, right? Like if somebody's giving you a piece of jewelry to
Right.
engrave,
Yes.
and you start scratching in on it, right?
That's why salespeople love it.
Okay.
Salespeople love engraving because you can't return it.
But it has to be right. So the precision has
Exactly.
to be there. So
There
what
are
are some
ways
of the
to correct
tools
things, but-
you still use tools today that are from the early tool makers? Can
yes,
you show
yes.
me a couple of them and talk about it?
This is probably the most important tool. It's called a square graver.
Okay.
And it's actually a science in itself, learning, again, before you even cut anything, you spend months and months learning how to fashion the tools. You have to have different facets and different angles and different curves. You notice this one's a little curved.
Yeah. May I touch
You may,
it? Is it sharp?
absolutely.
Will I get hurt with it? Or?
Well, yeah, as long as
Okay.
you don't hit the point,
Okay.
You have to have tools for deep areas, for concave areas, for convex areas, for flat areas. So you spend, and that's frustrating. That's probably one of the more difficult parts, taking a piece of steel rod and fashioning a tool from it.
Okay.
So, and these things, again, they go back to engraving is the first art. I mean, if you go back to the petroglyphs and the stone engraving, which this is all related, you're going back
The Rosetta Stone.
4000 BC.
was
Yeah,
engraved,
right. Exactly. It's in the Bible. They mention signets, which
Right.
which
Yeah, I was
these
gonna
are.
say, yeah,
They
so tell
mention
me about
signets
that.
in the Bible.
Yeah, so what are these, what are signets right now? Signets.
Signets are, well, they were always used in past for sealing.
Okay.
I mean, that was traditionally, you would
Like
see
with the
old
wax
movies with the
sealing,
wax.
you
Exactly,
stick your ring in it?
Well, that's what I do now. I didn't know, but
Wow.
I still got like one of the last ones that do that.
I
Where I'll
want
actually
that.
cut
Peter,
in-
I want
entirely-
that. I wanted to say, live it
yeah,
up.
it's
Bam.
become very popular. And when I first started, it was a male-dominated kind of thing. It was like kings and
Right.
but throughout the last 10, 15 years, it flipped. There are more women actually now having heraldic. If you Google celebrities
Yeah.
with crest rings, every model, every famous actor and
Have it.
actress wearing a signet ring. So
Excellent.
it really became kind of an acronym for fashion. So in a way, that's great. That's popular. But the downside is that there are a lot of people that are not aware. If you Google engraving on the internet, there are a lot of outfits out there that don't do what I do.
No.
I do hand. There's nothing electronic on my desk. The lamp, okay. The light is the only thing that is electric on my desk. Everything is 100% hand. There are outfits. Most of the outfits out there, they do part machine, part hand. They kind of stuff. So you have to be careful.
Yeah.
And also, they claim that they could find your family crest, which is not true. I mean, there's only one place. It's the College of Arms in Queen Victoria Street in England. That's the only place that you could really.
That's the official place.
That's the official place, and it's expensive. It might cost $10,000 to look up your coat of arms. But and of course, years ago they were specific. You couldn't use someone else's coat of arms. But today they're kind of like tattoos. Everybody, it's not as much. It's not as much as before. Years ago, you got the guillotine if you use somebody. But today you just people. They're almost, honestly, they're like tattoos. You know, people want to. I have a book that signifies there's thousands and thousands of different mythological creatures and figures that represent certain things. And people, you might find something that represents your character, and you put it on a ring. And people.
There you go. I'm
people
thinking
do
about
that.
the Live It Up logo. I mean, like just
Yeah.
like that it.
Well, Drake is a
That's it,
very,
too.
very popular. Sir Francis Drake. I mean, they're certainly. And I looked up yours. Yours is a wyvern, which has a connotation, which has a nice, noble connotation also. But yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. And the signets, again, I think they were made to hand down. It was real. That's what engraving in general is really all about.
That's what I was going to ask you. I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
find out two things. I wanted to ask you, one question was, I want to find out what the most interesting thing was that you've ever engraved. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is if it had to do with trade. Did people engrave things for ownership reasons?
Oh yeah, that's what
That's what it
heraldry was. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, back in the day, there was a form of security. I mean, they would seal their casks because poisoning was the main way of assassination back in those days. So you really, they would seal their cask, and actually engravers were held in high regard. They lived in the palace, the engravers, because they couldn't do that. That seal was important, and it was illegal. It was a big illegal
So
thing.
I'm coming over to your palace later today for lunch,
Yeah,
right? No.
Right. So it was important, and there's a professor in UCLA in mythology, and he's found in an ancient Assyrian text that a reference to seals, the seal engraving, and he said at that time, we're talking 1500, 2000 BC.
Right.
It was very expensive at that time, and engravers were held in high regard again. And the cost of one at the time was the cost of an ox, which I don't know how you today. That's maybe a SUV, right? I mean, so it was very, it was always held in high regard, the engraver. So unfortunately today, I think technology is really putting a dent in what we do. It saddens me because I'm kind of a garage sale buff. I go and I look for crafts. I look for old crafts, and I find them all the time. I mean, these things were things that were probably going to be discarded or melted, And I say, no, no, I saved them.
Save it.
I say, I have to save this.
And you
My wife wants
personally,
to kill me because
no.
my garage is full of old, that thing's
That's
full
okay.
of,
Someday it'll be a museum and it'll be
Right,
wonderful.
right.
The other question I had was, before we wrap up, what was the most significant or the most interesting thing you've ever engraved?
Well, I've engraved $1 million pocket watches that were in museum pieces where they were going to be museum. But the thing that I feel that I'm most proud of,
Yes.
Peter Jennings.
Okay.
There was an article, I can mention it because it was written up in People magazine, and when he was at the end of his life, his assistant came to the store and asked if he wanted to give his pocket watch to his son, and they gave it to me engraved. So I engraved it, and the phrase I engraved was "Loving deeply gives us courage." And the son in People magazine, he references how important that was. He says that almost makes him feel like he's still with his dad when he reads that. So those are the things that, as far as importance, it makes me feel like I'm kind of a conduit for emotion, for love, and those are really that's what I feel is most important for what I do.
I agree with you on a couple of reasons. One time I read a love letter between two people when the gentleman was away at war, and they talked about time, and they talked about engraving the back of a watch. And sometimes those magical messages, they live on forever. So thank you very much for joining us,
Okay.
Peter. Really
Thank you.
had a great time having you here.
Thank you very much.
Stay tuned for more on Live It Up. If you're interested in this wonderful, as we talked about, trade or art, please go to his website to learn more. Thanks for watching.